Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Arguably a submission of the year candidate coming up next. Delaney's OK Tire Langley inbox, along with Farhan. All of today's guests, including Farhan, standing by. Brought to you by the Vancouver Giants. Giants are currently on an Alberta road trip. Their next home game is Saturday, October 19th, when they take on Prince Albert. Prairie road trip. Grab a white spot pack for any game, which includes... You know what Ryan asked me?
I know.
I can't even say it.
It's very embarrassing.
I can't. I grab a white spot pack for any game. I'm just going to put it in the back pocket and use it for ammunition.
We'll use it some other day.
When one day he rips into me,
we'll use
I've got something.
I got it.
Grab a white spot pack for any game, which includes 4 tickets and a $40 white spot gift card. Packs start as low as $129. Head to VancouverGiants.com to grab your tickets for every game. Kyle, Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox. The most important question about last night's game, how was Rick's new blanket?
Oh!
How'd it go?
It was good. It was a beautiful night. I had to get the woolly socks out, blanket.
With fur?
It's green with like a little Christmassy feel. But anyways.
What?
It's green!
You said it had fur.
Fur's on the inside, green on the outside, and it's beautiful.
Fake fur.
I can't tell you, Donnie. I have found the blanket of the year.
Okay. If it's blanket coverage you're looking for from TSN, you talked to Farhan Lalji. He joins us now. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Did Rick talk about the little snifter or whatever was in the glass alongside the blanket?
No, I don't drink when I watch the Canucks. I'm working. Are you kidding me?
Last night you should have.
No. Well,
yeah. Afterwards.
Exactly, I should have.
Okay, 6-5 overtime, Farhan. You have a 4-1 lead at home, 3-0 before that. You had a 2-goal lead after 2 periods. They lose. How does that happen?
Well, I think everybody kind of owned it afterwards, right? Number one, they took their foot off the gas, and number two, they didn't win a puck battle, right? And Rick Talkin said after the game, look, I don't want to rip on these guys anymore because they know exactly what happened and they know what they did. And for him, I don't know that this is a complete surprise in that, he said it afterwards that, he worried this might happen, that you spend so much time in training camp focusing on transition and what you want to do to attack a little bit more and situationally around that, and then you don't spend as much time on the defensive principles because, camp is so short. All that time is limited, and sometimes you assume that all the, in football we would call it banked reps, right? That all of that you had from the previous year and a half under that regime would just stick. Well, it sometimes doesn't just stick. It's still a relatively young team, and then you've also got a number of newcomers that really haven't had that last year and a half of banked reps, as it were. So I think you'll probably take a step back the next time they have a full practice and go through some details and nail down where they want to be in terms of defensive zone coverage and commitment to that end of things before Friday's game. And, I would imagine, if nothing else, you're not going to see a team take its foot off the gas with a lead going into the third.
Was it you that asked the question last night in Talk at Scrum about the third defense pairing not getting much ice time, Desharnais and Forbert?
Yeah, look, it was, and I think that's got to be a concern, right? I mean, they were on the ice for some key goals against, and this was the biggest question I had around this team coming into the year. And last year, defense was an issue, and early on in the process, they went out and acquired Zadorov, and that made a difference. And I think they're going to have to do that again, right? Like, Forbert and Desharnais are a very much a step down compared to the other 4 defensemen this team has in terms of speed, right? And just general mobility. We know Forbert can block shots and he can penalty kill, and that's important. But if you want to play with pace and if you want to take the minutes of Hughes and Roenick and not overload them this early in the season, I think that's going to be something we've got to watch. Like, look, I'm one of those that was really surprised Edmonton reached the Stanley Cup final last year. And the reason for that was outside of their top pair, the rest of their defense simply wasn't good enough, and that included Desharnais. And now all of a sudden he's going to come here and they say, oh, well, we think there's still a ceiling there and we can do something, and all of a sudden you're expecting different results. This isn't a 21-year-old kid, right? So I just think that mobility for both those players is going to be a challenge for this team going forward. And they're not the reason they lost, because I think everybody across the board dropped the ball in certain areas, especially as it related to puck battles and will and things JT Miller talked about. But that doesn't get fixed in a couple of practices, that third pair.
Donnie and I have not touched on Pettersson yet, but in our Delaney's OK Charing Langley inbox, we got a ton of texts about Pettersson, and he's got to be a difference maker in that third period. He's got to be a difference maker when the Flames tie it and when they take a lead. What were your thoughts on Pettersson last night?
Similar, but it's one game, and I don't want to overreact, right? I mean, he's had a good camp. He's shown signs that he's got some speed back, even though he did talk on the first day of camp about the knee tendonitis being a bit of a lingering thing. That hasn't showed in the preseason when he got in. But look, I don't disagree with the fans. When you look at his ice time, right, he was over 23
minutes.
And when you look at JT Miller and Brock Besser, they were in the 17-18 range, right? So Pettersson got a ton of ice time in this game, and he had a second power play assist in the second goal, and then after that, there was a point where he set up Sprong and he set up DeBrusk, and one of those he probably should have shot it himself. There was a back check, I think, on a penalty kill where he made a pretty good play to take away a backdoor. But overall, I didn't think he was noticeable, especially given the ice time, right? And that can't continue. He's got to be noticeable. I don't think he played poorly. But, I want to see a guy that wants the puck on his stick. And when you have that much ice time, I better see the puck on your stick a lot. And I just didn't see a player that was hungry to create and be dynamic. And there was one point where I think he fumbled the puck near the blue line and lost it, and there was some audible boos from fans in game, and that's going to come for a player making this much, right? I mean, we talked about this before, that if he thought there was pressure without a contract and all the attention that came around that, you ain't seen nothing yet. Just ask Louis Eriksson, and this is going to be 10 times that, right? Like, the spotlight is going to be on Pettersson. So I don't think he was terrible, not overreacting because it was just one game, but I get why the fans are concerned because they're going to have a spotlight on him for a long time here.
All right, I'm going to talk about another high-profile athlete in the city that's got to be a difference maker and is not a difference maker right now, and I know you love him, but Nathan Rourke, last week, 6 field goals, 0 for 5 in the red zone, 2 touchdowns were from the defense, not from the offense. They've got the biggest game of the year now in Saskatchewan coming up. And so what's going on here? He hasn't thrown a touchdown pass in 3 games. That is, I mean, these are not numbers we could attribute to him in the past.
No, you're right, Rick. He hasn't been the same. And I asked him about it after the last game, and he can't really put his finger on it. I think he really wants to push the ball down the field and not play small ball as much as he's kind of being forced to play. There are times when you can see that, he hitches and rears back a bit and wants to push the ball down the field and then double clutches and, maybe doesn't see what he sees. And I think that's the issue. He's not seeing the game the way he did in 2022. And I'm surprised it's taken this long for him to get back to that. The receivers aren't as good as they were 2 years ago, but they're good enough, I think, to win with. They'll get Alex Hollins back this week, and they might get Jarrell Broxton back this week, and they'll get David Mackey. They won't have Javon Catoy. So there could be some offensive reinforcements coming, but ultimately this is going to come down to Nathan seeing the game and getting the ball out of his hands and making those types of plays and just looking confident and giving a sense of confidence to his teammates, because that's not happening either, right? So, there is no doubt that in hindsight it hasn't worked out, right? From so many levels, right? The locker room, the VA thing, all of it. But I'm not being critical of Nathan. I'm not being critical of the team, because if all of a sudden, if you were Winnipeg or Calgary or anybody else at that time of year 2 months ago, and Nathan Rourke approached you and said, I want to come back to the CFL, I want to play for you, right? Like, doors would have been opened, right? So It's easy to look at it from the point of revisionist history. And I do think Nathan will find it. I'm not convinced he'll find it this year, but I do think he'll get that game back and will be that player again. But I am surprised it's taken this long, and I think he is feeling the pressure and the frustration of it as well.
Farhan, I know Rick Campbell has gone on record saying Nathan Rourke's my guy for the rest of the season, but it's crunch time right now. Yep. They're hosting a Grey Cup. They want to, at the very least, host a playoff game. How short is the leash in Saskatchewan, given how important that game is? With Vernon Adams on the sidelines. No leash?
No leash. It's going to be Nathan Rourke from start. Like, he would have to throw a ton of interceptions. If he plays the way he did, in the last game where you're just not completing passes and you're not scoring and doing things in the red zone, like, you won't get an Argo type of leash. I think he would have to really, really, 3 interceptions in the first half, and it would have to really, really go south for him to make that level of change in the Saskatchewan game. If it were to happen in the playoffs, I do think that all bets are off at that point. But, I don't think it's going to happen immediately.
Okay, very, very quickly, are the Seahawks going to turn things around tonight after the loss to the Giants? They made Daniel Jones look really good.
Yeah, and that's a challenge, right? Like when you look at this team, and I'm heading down for the game this evening, defensively, they got a lot of guys banged up, right? Mm-hmm. And when people talk about what Mike Macdonald's defense is supposed to look like, even schematically, they're not attempting to do half the things they did in Baltimore right now, just because, you've got Nwosu going back on IR after playing 20 snaps this season, all of those in the last game. You've got, Tariq Woolen, Rick Woolen won't play tonight. Byron Murphy still isn't going to play tonight. You've got other guys, Boye Mafi and Derek Hall, that are questionable to play tonight. So he just hasn't been able to get all the guys that he needs, and they're not a deep team. So it's not like in Hamilton, I'm thinking Kyle Hamilton. In Baltimore, they had some reinforcements if one or two guys was banged up. They don't have that. So we're just seeing some vanilla looks, and they're not getting pressure, and they're making any quarterback look good. And if you are Brock Purdy, who's really been struggling the last couple of games, this could be a get-right game for you. Mm-hmm. And offensively, they need to find some balance, because I know that everyone was enamored with what Geno Smith did against Detroit a couple of games ago, but 52 passes was a career high, and then 40 passes the following week. And the running numbers, the rushing totals have been trending down for Kenneth Walker. That's not sustainable. I don't think Geno Smith is a bad quarterback, but he's not that good where you can put the entire offense and the entire season on his shoulders. He's just not good enough for that. They need some balance, and their offensive line also can't hold up if they're going to throw play after play after play. So get Kenneth Walker involved early, and I think you've got a chance in this game. But if not, you're going to get behind. I mean, when you look at Ayuk and Samuel and the success they've had against Seattle in recent games, like, they need to control this game a little bit, and they got to do it up front.
You know what's a sure bet in the world of broadcasting?
What's that?
I'll tell you what a sure bet is. If I ask anybody, even a veteran like Farhan, hey, very quickly, what do you think of the Seahawks? There was like a 10-minute answer.
10 minutes. Very quickly means
I'm
very
thorough. Hey,
quickly.
You want to know what was quick? I got a text from Henderson at 10:15, and it said, "We're in the break." And I'm like, "What?" Like, I was still having breakfast because I figured you'd be at least 4 or 5 minutes behind before getting to the segment.
Oh, okay, very good.
So I had to take up the time.
Yeah, so everybody ripped me for my time management, but I was going to say, Farhan, you can't help yourself. You're passionate. You love your football. You love your sports.
I love it. I love it. Let's do it. Let LFG. Come on, guys. Let's get to Seattle. We'll have a drink down there. Bring your blanket.
The blanket goes with me everywhere.
He's got it underneath the desk right now.
Yeah.
Thanks, Farhan. Love it.
See you, boys.